down the list of participants on the screen, and please identify where you are calling from. Okay, Christopher Gothberg is here. Phone number 17214-1005. Can you please unmute yourself and say where you're calling from?
Can you hear me? This is Jeremiah Asher, Institute of Water Research, MSU, and calling from a parked vehicle in Hazlitt.
Jeremiah? Okay, next one, phone number 517-410-2469. Please yourself, identify yourself and where you're calling. Phone number 517-410-2469. Can you identify yourself and where you're calling from?
Jim, they may be muted. How do we remind them?
*6 to unmute, I think.
Those of you on the phone, if you need to unmute, *6.
Can you hear me, Jim?
Okay, who's calling from 517-410-2469?
Otherwise, just come back to them.
Okay, we'll skip it. We'll come back to that person. Hannah Arnett.
Here, from Portland, Michigan.
Simon Belisle.
Meridian Township, Michigan.
Margaret Bettenhausen.
Here, Lansing.
Brian Eggers.
Here, I'm here, Standish, Michigan.
Brian Burrows. Please unmute yourself.
I'm here from DeWitt, Michigan.
Christine Spitzley.
I'm here from Mason, Michigan.
James Clift.
Here, Lansing, Michigan.
Okay.
To call my name, Clyde Dugan. I'm here from Meridian Township.
Thank you. Emily Finnell. Please unmute yourself. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Emily Finnell, Office of the Great Lakes Eagle, calling in from Meridian Township.
Okay, we have phone number 269-209-1566. (269-209-1566). Can you identify yourself, where you're calling from?
Are you able
You'll need to unmute yourself, *6. Okay.
Jim, are you able to unmute those phone numbers?
No. No, thanks. Okay, next caller, 231-242-0957. You'll need to unmute yourself. Please identify yourself and where you're calling from. 231-242-957.
It's Frank Etowagishik. I'm calling from Harbor Springs, and I'm here. Hello?
Okay.
I wanted to ask, I'm having trouble with the Teams link to the video link, so that's why I'm calling in on the phone.
Frank, we appreciate it.
Moving along. Grant Pool.
This is Grand Pool Pigment Potawatomi in Dowagiac, Michigan.
Ralph Hefner.
Hi there, Ralph Hefner, Lansing, Michigan.
Ross Helmer. Ross, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Just barely.
This is Ross Helmer from Jenison, Michigan.
There we go.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay, next, Jennifer McKay.
Hi, this is Jennifer McKay from Petoskey, Michigan.
And next we have Jim Nicholas. Jim, you. Jim Nicholas, you'll need to unmute yourself. Where are you calling from, Jim?
Oceana County.
John Yelich.
John Yelich, Michigan Geologic Survey, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
We have some late additions here. Let me scroll back up. I think it's Mike Frederick. Mike Frederick, are you there?
Is there anyone else who is on Teams or we haven't called yet?
Yes, Tom Frazier calling in from Hazlitt.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Adam Zwickel calling in from East Lansing.
Hello, it's Blush. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Is this Ben?
It's calling in from Lansing, Michigan.
Bagel in there. Mixed sandwich. I can't talk right now.
Actively.
Kelly Turner.
Yes, Kelly Turner calling in from Heartland, Michigan. I'm the alternate for Jason Walther, who will be joining at 1:30.
Rachel Proctor.
Yep, this is Rachel Proctor from Consumers Energy calling in from Lansing.
Perry Truskin.
Yeah, Perry Truscon, Office of the Great Lakes, calling from East Lansing, Michigan.
Pat Stashevitz.
Hi, this is Pat Staskevich with Ottawa County, calling from Grand Haven, Michigan. And if you're having troubles connecting, I went through the website and connected that way.
Thank you, Pat. Steve Kohler.
Yes, I'm here calling from Kalamazoo, Michigan.
You. Todd Feenstra.
Here, calling from Edwardsburg, Michigan.
You. Sarah Pearson.
Sarah Pearson, Eagle Drinking Water and Environmental Health Division, Portland, Michigan.
Is there anyone else who I haven't called? Megan Tinsley. Have I called you already?
No. I wasn't sure if you were just doing the members first, and I think officially I'm still part of the public. I reside in Lansing, but I'm visiting family in Cleveland, Ohio at the moment.
Is there anybody else whose name I haven't called yet?
Farm Bureau. I'm an alternate for Laura Campbell. I'm calling from Charlotte, Michigan.
Okay, can you repeat your name, please?
That was Ben Terrell.
Ben Terrell. Gotcha. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hey,
All right.
Andy LeBaron from Olive Township, Quinn County.
Thanks, Andy.
Okay, anybody else whose name I haven't called or phone number I haven't called? All right. Hearing nothing, then I will switch over to the slides.
All right. Well, thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. I also want to make sure, and for those who are on the phone, so that you are aware of who's here in the room. I will tell you today that we're not going to take any votes on anything, including approval of meeting minutes, because we most definitely do not have quorum in person. At any rate, my name is Laura Campbell. I'm with Michigan Farm Bureau. I serve as one of your co-chairs for the council, and we'll just go the rest of the way around the room. All right. Thanks, Chris.
Oh, it looks like we just had Dave Lush join us. Okay, Dave Lush, can you tell us where you're calling from? We'll get that.
All right.
Laura, this is Frank Itawagishik. I am able now to check on using the website. I can get on the Teams meeting. I hear a big echo. I'm going to try to be quiet for a while.
And his has to have the sound for the owl, right?
Yes. All right, straighten that up. Everybody, if you're sitting there and not speaking, can you please make sure to mute your phones? Is *6 on phones, so that way we don't get that horrendous echo.
It's not letting me admit Dave Lush.
Are we back on with sound? Okay, let's finish going around the room while we're still kind of trying to figure out the last of these technical issues. Jordan, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Logan. I'm here on
Or
behalf.
sorry, Logan.
I think called Jordan. My name is Logan. I'm here on behalf of OHM for Christine Spixley.
Dave Hamilton, retired from the Nature Conservancy.
Abby Eaton, Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development.
Doug Needham with the Aggregate Association.
Christine Alexander with EGO.
Jamil, Eagle.
All right, thanks everybody. I appreciate your patience with the roll call. It just goes to prove that even after a year and a half of pandemic, we can still be foiled by technology sometimes. I am going to ask at this time, since we're not able to take a vote on approval of the agenda or the minutes, I will ask if there are any amendments that people need to make or additions we need to make to the agenda. And hearing none, I will also ask if there is any public comment that anyone would like to make. We usually reserve this time for public comments for things that are related to agenda items. We'll have another opportunity at the end of the meeting for open comments on anything, but if anyone would like to make a public comment on agenda items right now, you may do so. You've got 3 minutes if you'd like to make those public comments. And I do see a hand raised here, but I can't tell who it is.
It's Ben Terrell.
Ben, are you hoping to make a comment? You'll have to unmute yourself if you want to speak.
No, sorry.
All right.
Team's really glitchy today.
Must be a whole bunch of school kids on some project around here. All right, thanks everybody. I'm not seeing anybody else's hand raised for any other public comments. So we'll go ahead and jump right in where we've ran all the way down to item number 6 now. Legislative report on the implementation of our 2020 recommendations. Brian Burrows, you actually have some information that you. Can I ask you to give a summary of what you've been able to find out?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll share what I have heard, and then and also sort of invite any others here to share their information as well. My understanding at this point is that, and you may have noticed this, but the requested budget for the recommendations in our report were removed from the general fund appropriation bills. And so we started trying to ask what shape we are in for funding still, if not for general fund. And what I heard back generally was very positive, at least from the Senate side. It seemed as though there was, very clear purpose of getting the money for the recommendations, but using other pots of money coming to the state for that, for the recommendations. Just so, even though it was removed from general fund, there still seems to be a very good understanding, support, and commitment to getting the budget for the recommendations. The House side has been a little bit more difficult to assess. Limited conversations with both parties, just a handful of representatives, was that it's the need and the investment still seems to be pretty well understood and supported. Again, a little softer on my read there than the Senate side. I think it is an appropriate time if anybody has contacts with some of the House leadership, and I believe some of the names that are good there include Representative Albert, Allor, and Alexander are particularly useful contacts. But again, there seemed to be a pretty good recognition of the investment and the need. I would just surmise that, you know, the process is still underway to figure out how much exactly and which fund sources would be used. So I think it's appearing less likely to get general fund and more likely to be targeted to some of the other federal fund sources coming into the state. So that's basically what I have. Sort of good news in that nobody should probably read it being stripped from general fund as a sign of support for the need or the investment. Just probably a little bit longer and more complicated to get everybody into consensus on where to fund it from. So it's up there. Again, just a reminder, if you have contacts, those would be good to do now and touch base with any representatives or senators that you have good organizational ties with. But that's what I have. So with that, Laura, I would just say, you know, anybody can ask me questions, but I'm sure some others participating today probably also have some good conversations to maybe share.
Dave, you had a comment?
Well, a question, Brian. So is it your understanding that there's more budget bills that are in the works that this would be flip into?
Yes.
Good.
Does anyone else have questions or comments? I'm especially virtually looking at James. If you've got any understanding or information from the director's office or other sources on where we are with the funding and the recommendations?
Consistent with what Brian said, is that we're just in a wait and see mode as they move on to the next round of budgeting.
Other questions or comments?
Just curious, John Yelich, you know, and I know there was some money maybe for mapping. Did that get approved?
My understanding from looking at the last budget boilerplate that came through, the one that Brian mentioned, is that both Outman's bill, which supported the Michigan Geological Survey mapping, and Bumstead's bill that had just kind of the general money toward the recommendations, those have both been zeroed out, because I think the intention is to move all that stuff over to the federal funding sources. John, are you aware of anything else? Have you heard anything from your end at the Geological Survey?
I have not, and this is the first that I heard that they were going to try and do annual funding from federal funding. So that's a first.
Well, and I don't know that it's annual funding either. I mean, this could be the American Recovery Plan money that's coming in. We haven't heard details on it.
Then that's new news for me.
Well, I don't even think I could call it news. I mean, because we're not sure.
What Brian said was, I thought that it had to do with the Bumstead bill only. I didn't realize that it had to do with the Outman bill as well, taken out of the general fund. So I will see what I can find out.
Zeroed out too.
I'll see what I can find out.
Anything else on implementation of the 2020 recommendations? Jim, you'll have to tell me if anybody's raised their hand, because I'm not able to see that on the screen. All right, well, I'm hearing none. I will go ahead at this time and turn it over to, I think, Brian Burrows. Are you taking over for this next part?
Yes, yep, I got it. Thank you, Laura.
Who are you?
Hopefully everybody can hear me well. We're going to enter into the committee updates, but I would like to, if it's not objectionable, I would like to go and switch the order minorly. I saw a note from Emily that she may need to bow out before too long. And I'd like to maybe do the Conservation and Efficiency Committee update first. So if there is no objection to that, let's go ahead and do that. Emily, is that you that will lead it, or you and Kelly, or you have it?
I'll go ahead and do the report out.
Thank you.
Is Jim or someone going to be able to pull up the slide?
Working on it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and keep us moving then. There's a lot of things toggling on Teams today, so appreciate everybody's patience for the meeting. So we've been pretty busy again for the last couple of months with the Water Conservation Efficiency Committee. We've added a few new members to the committee. One person who's able to join us today for the Water Use Advisory Council, and that is a new addition for the Office of the Great Lakes. Simon Billiel is the new Great Lakes Policy Specialist with OGL. Thanks, Simon, for waving. And Simon just started at the end of August, so he'll be working on compact and water use related projects among a variety of other tasks. So Simon was able to jump right in and get involved in the Water Conservation and Efficiency Committee. We also added Yunsuk Dung from Michigan State University Extension. He's an irrigation specialist. So we are continuing to expand the committee in addition to all of the water use program staff that have come on board over the summer. So it's a pretty large committee now. I look forward to being able to meet face to face eventually. So I wanted to update you on that. We've continued our speaker series that we started at the beginning of the year to help build the knowledge base of the committee members of current water conservation and efficiency practices and learning from the different water sectors about their current efforts. We were really fortunate to have the opportunity to hear Frank Edwigijic share the tribal perspective on the importance and value of water to the tribes and how they view water conservation and stewardship. And so that was our September presentation. And then we just recently heard from Carrie McElhenney, who is with the EPA Water Sense program. It's a national program that many of the Great Lakes states participate in, and is one of the comments that we had gotten on our 5-year program review to take a look at that program and consider partnering and utilizing a lot of their educational resources. A lot of their work focuses on working with different consumer products, but we think there's some connections, so we're going to explore that a little bit further. We always record our presentations, so if any council members or other committee members are interested in hearing some of the presentations, just reach out to Kelly or I, and we can share those recordings. We've formed a subcommittee to help move forward on the WUAC 2020 recommendation, looking at ag efficiency and developing some more strategically focused education and outreach programs. So that subcommittee is actually going to be meeting for the first time this week on October 14th at 11 o'clock. And Kelly Turner will be chairing that subcommittee, and several of our committee members are participating in that. So if you're interested in being involved in those discussions, reach out to Kelly and we can forward you the Zoom meeting notice. The University of Michigan Dow Fellows team have been working very diligently over the last couple of months on the assessment, looking at our current climate, energy, water infrastructure, and water sustainability programs and policies in Michigan, specifically, and for opportunities to integrate and make progress towards our water conservation efficiency goals and objectives. They've also been looking at the other Great Lakes states and provinces and their water conservation programs. And a few other water-rich states across the country. So they are putting together their draft report that will be submitted to me later this week. So I'll be reviewing that with some of our staff in OGL and then a few other colleagues in Eagle. And we hope to have a final report by the beginning of December that can be shared with the committee and presented to the committee at our Water Conservation Efficiency meeting on December 2nd. And then bring back the results of that work to the full WUAC. The last thing that we've started working on, and this is something really actually the Office of the Great Lakes coordinates, and that is the development of the annual Water Conservation Efficiency Program assessment. Each year we're required to submit under the Great Lakes Compact an assessment of our program. And this focuses mostly on the state agency work, but a lot of that is very collaborative, as you all know. So we are developing the 2021 Water Conservation Efficiency Program assessment, and we'll be sharing that with the committee in a draft form in early November, just to give them a chance to review. They've also had an opportunity to contribute if there's things that they think should be highlighted. That report gets submitted to the Compact Council and the regional body, usually right before Thanksgiving, so either November 22nd or 23rd, depending on how the days fall. So those reports are all public noticed through the regional process in advance of the Compact Council and the regional body meetings that occur every year in December. I think that's all I had for updates. Kelly or Simon or any other committee members, did I miss anything?
That's all we had on our list, I believe. This is Simon.
Thanks. Thanks, Simon. All right, that's my update.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions for Emily or the other committee members? If you do, I guess if you're in the room, help me out, go ahead and speak up. And if you're virtual, then just raise a hand. I should be able to see, I think. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody, so I think that's great. Thank you very much for the report. Thank you. All right, and for anybody else, I believe there were a few slides that you can see in the online meeting slide presentation that's on the website. So if you want to see the visuals there, but Emily did great without them, so thank you. Okay, I'm going to switch over, go back in our agenda flow and go to the data collection committee, which I have to give the report. Couple of different things. First, I would say our last meeting that we had, we spent some time reviewing what the state of Wisconsin, their Department of Natural Resources, has done in one particular area of the state to better assess the impacts of cumulative water withdrawals on some lake environments. So I found it to be a very interesting and useful time spent on it. I would encourage the rest of you to also maybe take a look sometime when you have a few minutes. The state of Wisconsin, you can find it all on their public websites. Really some incredible communications products from that. They not only have, you know, the traditional monster report, but they really did, I think, a really great job putting together some automated presentations with some very good visual diagrams of the whole process that they went through. Some good high level ones, and also you can dig in and get some really lengthy ones about all the different technical components, but pretty interesting, pretty useful. We are continuing to reflect on that just to see if we can take another bite at the lakes question ourselves, which has kind of evaded us for a long time. In addition to the lakes work and reviewing the Wisconsin DNR stuff, we have continued minorly to get our feet under us for kind of auditing and reviewing all of our data collection protocols. We still have quite a bit of work to do on that front, but that is something that is kicking around in our committee as well. And that was one of the recommendations that we said we would follow up on from the last report. And then more of an organizational update for everybody is that my committee co-chair, Tom Zimnicki, has left the Michigan Environmental Council to join the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. And so we are officially hunting for another data committee co-chair. I put that out to the data committee members, and to my shock, nobody jumped all over that. So we are still looking. Now, I will say that as Tom's replacement is in the process of getting, I guess, final and officially approved, Megan has graciously volunteered to help provide service in that role. So I believe we may be in good shape if nobody else truly wants to vie for that key leadership role. And if that all shakes out, we may come back just to kind of do official housekeeping and get the full council here to bless the co-chair replacement, just for good process. But that is sort of the housekeeping update and some of the content update from the data committee. So I would also take a moment to invite any other committee members that want to reflect on anything that we've been working on or relay it differently than I. Feel free to jump in and to cut down on some of our electronic meeting time. If anybody else there in the room or online have any questions for the data committee, go ahead and raise your hands or speak up if you're in the room.
This is Laura. The Wisconsin study on cumulative on lakes, is that posted to their DNR's website, or where can somebody find that?
Yep, you can get into the Wisconsin DNR, and I think it's referred to as the Central Sands study. But yes, it is all on the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. And like I said, there's a couple of pages devoted to it. They actually have a lot of material that they've made public, a lot of presentations. Some of them are actually hours with, all the geology, but they have some really nice boiled down overview ones too. So a big variety of products from that on their website.
Thanks.
Okay. We're ready for Dave Hamilton.
We're not quite to Dave's yet. Next up would be the implementation committee. So that would be Doug and or Laura.
Oh, we did have to reschedule. We had a conflict at our last meeting that was supposed to take place a couple weeks ago. Our next subcommittee meeting is October 21st at 1 o'clock. That's going to be virtual. So we have no report other than to share our next meeting time.
Could you repeat the meeting time?
October 21st at 1.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. If there are no questions about that, we are all set to now move on to the models committee. And Dave, is it you in person or are you tag teaming with Jim?
In person. I didn't even see if Jim's online, is he? Good. All right. Well, he can chime in as necessary. So I have prepared a recommendation from the Models Committee. It is a consensus recommendation. It includes a one-page write-up and a map. I didn't go out, did it? I sent it to Christine.
I don't think it has gone out, but
Okay.
we'll make sure that.
After this meeting at some point, but it does exist. And otherwise, I will go over my report on that. So next slide, Jim. So this is the map that goes with the report. And what we did is that we took the original analysis that was done that went into the tool, which goes to water year 2007. And we said, okay, what happens if we extend it to all of the gauge record that we have in 2007? And what we have is 2018. So that's what we looked at. And I just want to note that the 2007 through water year 2007 is based on statute. So that we're required to use data that goes through water year 2007 to calculate the index flow, and that was required in statute. In 2014, the council looked at the same question of, do we need to update the methodology or the statistics for the index flow? And at that point, we looked at extending that through the year 2012. And now we're through 2018. So at this point, for this analysis, there were 147 gauges that were included in the original analysis. there were 91 left that we could still pull some material on for this latest extension. They had at least some record between 2008 and 2018. Now, the area that's covered by these gauges represents 33.5% of Michigan's land area. So if you look at the area on the map, if you add those up, that'll add up to 33.5%. Now, 72% of this area then has changes in index flow that are plus or minus 5%. Extended record to 2018. The average change is plus 3.7%. Now, as you look at the map, there's some areas that that do have some changes that are larger than 9%. So there's 6% of the gauged area is over 9% up, and 2% is 9% negative, less than 9% negative. And as we look at the map, you can also see there may be some regional patterns. Now, the committee does not consider that the changes that we see based on this to be significantly large enough to merit an overall statistical update of the index flow. But I want to go through some other things that we looked at because, well, first, next slide, Jen. I just wanted to show you a little bit out of the spreadsheet. A few things I want to point out on that. So when you see the this, where you can read it, you'll notice if you look at the water years, the record, period of record, that varies a lot. So, for example, the ones that are highlighted there in yellow, those are the ones that were actually, when we did the original study in 2005, 2008, they had already been discontinued gauges. So we just used what record was available at that point. The ones that are highlighted in blue have had a loss of data or were discontinued during this time period between 2007 and 2018. And as you look at these, you also see that it's a mixed bag with its history. So there's some gauges that start and stop over time. So there's a real mixed bag of just what data we have. And I just want to point that out because when you look at where we are now, there were 16 gauges that discontinued during this time period between 2008 and 2018. So we're getting down to about 75 of the original 147 that's still active gauges, so about half. So I just want us to think about that, of what database is lost or how much data is lost, and being able to tie into the we set this program up on, and the ability to tie into that to make any changes in the future. We're kind of losing ground. So I wanted to make that point. Extending the record as we did in this exercise is a standard method in hydrology that you want to keep adding to your record. You want the record as long as possible. And the reason that that is done is that then you have a way to tie extremes, either high or low, into context. And you'll be able to say, okay, we had a drought in the 1930s, we had a drought in the 1960s, we had a dry year in 2013. How does that compare with the other years? What does that mean statistically when you look at the entire record? So in hydrology, that's why we look at it that way, and that's what's been done here. That was what we looked at in this this spreadsheet and in this analysis. But there's been questions that have been raised about, okay, climate change, and should we be looking at, are the flows going up? Should we be looking at something different? So some of the things that we did, and let's go to the next slide, Jim. Some of the things we did is to look at this idea of moving average. And I'm going to use this to kind of explain what a moving average is like and how it affects a record. So this is what the National Weather Service uses. They use a 30-year period to find what's normal. And that actually just changed within the last few months. So if you look at the lower right, 1991 to 2020, that's what's the official National Weather Service record now. So they say, hey, this is normal. That's what they're using. But I want to go back to the upper left, 1901 to 1930. Those maps look entirely different because they are. And what happened in the early 20th century is there was a period of very extreme drought, culminating with the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. And so the brown that you see in those early ones is reflecting that. And as you can see, so every 10 years, the Weather Service updates the record, says this is our new normal. So you can see when they went from 1901 to 1930 to 1911 to 1940, they're picking up a lot more dry years. When they go to the next 10-year period, they've done that again. And it's even more so when you get to the 1930, 1960, because then you're picking up dry years, not only of the 30s, but of the 50s. And as you pick up the next one, you're picking up the dry years of the 60s. So I just want to show what kind of changes you see using a moving average. And this is a 30-year moving average. So they're very different stories. So if you look at Michigan back in the 30s to the 60s time period, things have been pretty dry in Michigan. You look at it now, it's very wet compared to that. You look at the Southwest, you look at the 1901, 1930, that's when they made the big compact between all the states on the Colorado. Well, guess what it looks like now? They're in the middle of an extreme long-term drought. So these things can be used for a lot of presentations, but you lose a lot of historical information as well doing this. So I just want to point that out to explain how the moving average works. So Jim, if you go to the next slide. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to be able to look at in using moving average was that, well, what would happen if we grouped certain areas or certain gauge periods together? For example, what if we wanted to look at, say, just drier periods, or we just want to look at wetter periods? Could we learn something by doing that? So what I did is I went back to the Corps of Engineers record of the Lake Michigan, Lake Huron levels. And so what I did is say, okay, if we've got a period of years where the water levels are dropping, we'll call that a drier period. If we've got a period of years where the water levels are going up, we're going to call that a wetter period. So I'm assuming that that's integrating stream flow basically from Michigan and some surrounding areas to feed the Great Lakes, Michigan, and Huron. So I used that to define my terms. And again, the reason I'm doing that is I wanted to be able to compare like time periods of dry versus wet without being any further quantified than that. Okay, the next slide. So this is an example of the St. Joe River, and the gauge number is 0409900, of which those that use this kind of thing affectionately just call it 990, because the rest of it becomes, you only need all those numbers under certain circumstances. So remember 990 because we'll come back to that. Now this is a 10-year moving average of that gauge. So it's the St. Joseph River at Montville. I want to focus on the middle one, which is the 50% median. And I'll actually use this to kind of clarify some things that people may not fully understand. So the bottom line is the 95%. That's an extreme drought condition. That means that 95% of the time in August, we have flows greater than that. And I believe this is an August depiction. The other side, the high side, is the 5%. That means that only 5% of the time you have flows greater than that. So those are, they're not flood flows, but they're relatively high flows. The flow that we're using and what's based on our, this program is based on is the median, or 50%. Half the time it's above, half the time it's below. So it's neither drought nor wet, it's just kind of, I've looked at it as kind of, it's the typical summer flow. It's just kind of not unusual, not unusually wet, not unusually dry. So if you look at this, this is a 10-year moving average. So the first, all the way on the left, that's 1924 to 1934. So it starts on October 1, 1924 and goes to September 30th, 1934. So it is 10 full years. And you see what the numbers would be. And so actually for the first few of those, so the next one you go is 1925 to 1935, and 1926, 1936. So that's how this is moving. And so those first few are dominated by extreme drought in the 1930s. And you can see that the 50% flow, which would be our index flow, is down around 600, maybe the high 500s at that point. then as you move through time, it comes up. And you start seeing that flow is getting up near 1,000. And you get to times that are more recent after the 60s, and you're getting up over 1,000, maybe 1,100, 1,200 CFS. So you can get quite a bit of variation. So this shows it graphically this way. So you could pick out, if you want to look at any 10-year period, you can do that. This is the record for that gauge. You can see how moving average changes. Next slide, Jen. Now this is taking the same information of a moving 10-year, but I pulled out more gauges so that you could see, okay, what happens if you look across part of the state? This, I think, is mainly in the western part of the state. And I also pulled it out so that we could look at what happens if you have different time periods. So if you took the 1954 to 1964, that's a pretty dry time period. And if we look at 990 again, which is kind of in the center, you see that for all years of record, it's 860, which would be the index. But you look at it, this dry period, this dry 10 years, it's 728. You go down to other 10 years, you've got the next one is 878, and you get to the late 80s and the 90s, pretty wet period, you're almost to 1,000. And you look at 1996 to 2006, you're at 823. So you get a lot of variation within any one gauge. And if you look across the region, there's changes, but it's hard to tell when you're just looking at flows because they're different drainage areas. So I'll go to the next slide, which will give you a way to interpret this in a different manner. So this one is a 5-year moving average where I looked at dry periods. So the 1997 to 2001, the 87 to 91, and the 73 to 77 relatively dry periods. So on the left side of the chart, you'll see numbers, and we can find 990 again. So if we look at 990, we'd see that the index flow is 850. It's either 850 or 860. I'd actually have to verify where it is. But you look across even those relative dry times, you've got some variation between 810 and 958. So even though we kind of label those as dry, you still get quite a bit of variation within that. Now you go to the right side of the spreadsheet, I've normalized these. So I've divided the average of that period by the index flow. So here you can look at it more as a percentage. So 990, we're going from 95% of the index flow to 13% above 1.13 of the index flow. And here you can look, if you look up and down on that part of the spreadsheet, you can see the variation across the area. And here I've got the names of the gauges that go along with it. So you can see what kind of change you see across part of the state. And I think most of these gauges are on the western side. I don't see anything yet. So these are pretty much all western part of Michigan, flowing into Lake Michigan. So, and there's also, you see where the NAs are? That's where there's gaps in the record. The record isn't there. So what we're seeing here is we're using the moving, 5-year moving average, and we're seeing a very volatile record. Now, the last thing I want to point out, and this is all the way to the left, there's the two most recent 5-year periods. So I'll go back to 990. So in 2015 to 2019, hey, this was a pretty wet time. Okay, we know that. If you were going to define your index flow based on those 5 years, it would be 1,000 to 60. Well, what if you go to the previous 5 years, 2010 to 2014, then you'd be at 840. So this is the kind of volatility you see in moving averages. And the question comes up, well, you know, it's been really wet. Should we change the index flow based on that? Jim, let's go to the next slide, which I think is the last one. And what I want to say is that none of the moving average results, oh, but one more point, that we also ran a 20-year, the last 20 years of record. Because the question was, well, what if we made the record longer? Let's look at the most recent one. Do we see anything there? You know, to say, hey, climate change is it. You know, things have definitely changed. We looked at that, and the results were, I think we call them ambiguous. Some are up, some are down. There's not a clear thing that we would say, yes, we've got to change based on this. So looking at all of these moving records, and my conclusion would be that there's not, and the conclusion of the committee is that there's not a compelling case to be made to change from our current system at this time. Now I say at this time because this should be looked at periodically. You know, the recommendation from the original group that worked on this is we should look at this every 5 years. We are seeing a gentle trend upward in flow, although it's not consistent across the state. It's not consistent where we feel comfortable recommending that there will be changes. So the recommendation from the committee, that's the consensus unanimous recommendation, is that an overall statistical update of all index flows is not necessary at this time. I want to take a couple minutes to end this presentation with a personal note, personal observation. So as most of you know, I was very closely involved in the development of this legislation. So I was over there a lot, that we would develop these models and these results. We sit down and explain to the legislative staff, you know, this is what it means. It had been approved by the council, and we go over with them. The legislative staff, you know, based on direction from the legislators, they wanted something that was scientifically sound. So when I said that, hey, we looked at this and we looked at, you know, the lowest low flow month in the summer months, instead of saying, well, why don't we just look at August, which is what I would have actually preferred to do, they said, no, because you get this change. We want this. This is what your scientific stuff shows. So they wrote it into the law, and that's how we define the index flow. There's another thing that they did, which I think is really important to understand, is they wanted this index flow to be kind of set. Not necessarily set in stone forever, but they didn't want it changing every little bit. And they sure didn't want DEQ changing it, just kind of arbitrarily. I mean, that was real clear in their mindset. So in the legislation, it's written that, you know, index flows is through the water year 2007, through the actual language that says what we've got by 2008, which is what we had through water year 2007. So that's what all the work has been based on. And as we look at these moving averages, if we went to another system, you have the potential to have very volatile indexes. And I just want to lay out that I don't think it's in the interest of any interest group that cares about this program to have index flows that are going up in a few years to go down. Farmers aren't going to care if it goes up. They're going to say, hey, great. If it goes down, they're going to be suing us. They're going to be very unhappy. The farmers can have a heck of a time trying to administer a program with values are going up and down. So I guess my recommendation personally, and I think that Amal and Peter probably agree with this, that until we have a compelling trend, it's not in our interest to change this. When we do have a compelling trend, I think at that point, it's going to be incumbent upon the council to let's look at it, let's figure out what does it mean, how would we figure out how to best calculate index flows under those circumstances. But I don't think it's worth our time until we've got a trend that's very clear to us that we feel like we need to move forward. So anyway, recommendation from the committee, which is an overall statistical update of all index flows, is not necessary. I don't know if we ultimately have to adopt that by the council or not, but that is our recommendation. So I'll stop. That is my full discussion and answer any questions anybody has.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just want to let you know that Andy LeBaron posted that the index flow recommendation document that Dave is referring to is on the Eco Water Use Advisory Council webpage. So,
okay, so it has gone out.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Thank you.
I knew the slides were up. I hadn't seen the recommendation, so.
Okay, so the recommendations are for council members for you to look at sometime when we can vote on it. If you think we need to vote on it, we can do that.
Okay.
Other questions?
So I guess just a question that I have is not changing the index flow figure, but if someone needed a site specific, how do you deal with that?
You do that. So the site specific is developed to be able to develop index flows. And they do change based on that. But if we're looking at a systematic, we want to change this whole system.
Well, I'm curious though.
Well,
and I did a site specific I potentially could get
I
acceptance,
don't think you should get that.
but that's what I'm just kind of curious how that works.
I don't think that it would, but potentially it could, but I don't think that that's the intention of the process.
Any other
Any other
questions? I'm not seeing any hands raised from anybody on the virtual side of the meeting. Are there other questions in the room?
We're good.
All right, Dave, you mentioned whether or not we need an affirmative to develop an affirmative consensus on this or not, since it's since the work group is recommending no affirmative change unless I guess that was reversed by the council, we wouldn't move forward with making a change. But nonetheless, it might be good to have the affirmation of the committee's recommendation. Is that correct? Would you like that? Were you hoping for that now at this meeting, or should we hold that, or?
Can officially do it at this meeting?
Correct.
I mean, we could do it by an unofficial consensus. But yes, at some point, whether it's today or some other time, I would appreciate that. And in 2014, the council did do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, obviously we have the attendance and quorum stuff, so we will hold over, the right process to affirm it. But does anybody on the council at this point have any concerns with what's been received? Any very clear and certain at this time, like, hey, I definitely have some issues? Or was this pretty well received, understood, seems smooth, and we'll just circle back on process for a future meeting?
Brian, I think I would recommend, particularly since we don't have quorum to take a vote on consent anyway, that we give the council members some time to review the slides and see if they have questions or any concerns about it, and then plan on, I agree with Dave, I think it would be good for us to take an affirmative action one way or the other on the recommendation, particularly because we did include it in the 2014 list of recommendations, and also that we should continue to revisit this question. So so when we do have the opportunity to take a vote, I would like for the council to weigh in on it.
Okay, that's good. And I'm not seeing any hands go up immediately. So what I would just ask though is, so as we kind of grapple with our future agendas, if any members, do perceive issues with that, and we need to spend a lot more time discussing and working through anything, please raise that with, any of the co-chairs here, just so we can plan out a future agenda time appropriately on it. Okay, well, still not seeing any hands raised on that. Thank you very much, Dave. I appreciate you you taking that nice walk through what the discussions have been on that. Thank you. All right, switching gears, we have the new topics committee report, and that would either be Pat and or Jason.
Update on that, Brian. We did get a YouTube video from Jeremiah Asher that was kind of hanging up some of the distribution of our last meeting to those that couldn't attend. So I sent that out, and they're also discussing this with the Conservation and Water Efficiency Committee meeting. And so I'm going to coordinate with Emily to work with that group so we can just have one meeting to do the follow-up discussion. So that's all that's going on with that group.
Thank you, Pat. Anybody have any questions, follow-up questions for Pat?
Pat, I'm sorry, did you say that Jeremiah's presentation was sent out, or that it's been?
It's on YouTube, and I sent it to the New Topics Committee an email last week. If you didn't get that, I can look and try to resend that again.
It was not sent to the full council.
So it wasn't sent to the full council.
No, it's sent to the New Topics Committee.
Okay. Is there an opportunity for folks who aren't on the New Topics Committee to either contact you to request a copy, or how do we get a copy if we'd like to take a look at that?
Yeah, that would be fine. They're also circulating it on the Water Conservation and Efficiency Committee. And so I think regardless of, we're going to try to get together at one point and talk about it. So whether that's a committee meeting that everybody attends or we bring it back to the council for another meeting, I guess we'll see depending on the interest.
Okay, thanks.
That's good. If anybody's interested in looking at it, contact Pat by email or perhaps check in with the Water Conservation and Efficiency Committee. Any other questions for Pat? Okay. I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much for your report and the work. All right. Brian Eggers, this is the point where you are going to take over on agenda item number 8.
Thank you, Brian. And with that, it is time for Jim's Eagle update.
All right. 1 second while I juggle screens here. Okay, hopefully this works. Bear with me. Good afternoon. This is the program update for Eagle's Water Use Program. I'm going to give you a personnel update for the Water Use Assessment Unit. Then I'm going to share quarterly program metrics for the first quarter of program year 13. I'll give you an update on the status of depleted water management areas. I also have an update on the Blue Triton, formerly Nestle White Pine Springs facility. Then I'll give you an update on developing the next 5-year cumulative impact assessment for the Great Lakes Compact, and then I'll answer any questions that you all might have. So the personnel update, U.S. staff Naomi Morgan resigned from state service. I've made a contingent offer to another candidate from the same pool.
Jim, have you shared your slides on Teams? They're not showing up.
You might need to put it on the other screen.
It's hard having multiple screens on Teams because you don't know which screen to go.
Share screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you
They'll show you the screen. Yeah. Go through. Yeah.
There you go, it's coming through.
All right. All right, details.
And Jim, what was her responsibility?
She was one of the new hires to do site-specific reviews. You know what? We'll share the screens, the slides afterwards.
Jim, you're there, it's there, I can see it.
Yeah.
Here you go. This is what's there. Go right ahead.
All right, people are more confident than I am. All right, so I made another offer, contingent offer to a candidate from the same pool, and we're just waiting for authorization to make the final offer and get it accepted. So that candidate will hopefully start in December or January.
Jim, click presentation mode. PowerPoint.
Do that.
Is it on both screens?
It's okay, just move.
Good enough.
Yep, numbers are there.
Compliance numbers, 201 compliance communications, 17 after the fact registrations. That's when there's enough stream flow available to authorize water use after the fact. We issue a registration. We sent out 53 requests for missing pump information when a well log does not have the pump capacity listed. 73 revised registrations, so when a withdrawal is installed and or operated differently than what was originally authorized by either the tool or SSR, we send an amended registration. So 73 of those, and then 58 what we call installation verification. So we're contacting the property owner to verify that in fact they did install the large quantity withdrawal. So if they didn't, then that's water that could be freed up for use by somebody else.
Quick question, Jim. This is for 1 quarter?
Yes, so that would be July 9th through September 30th.
I mean, that seems like a lot of compliance communications. Is it because of your new staff that you're putting a focus on this, or is that a typical quarter?
Christopher, would you say that's typical, or?
I mean, lately, yes, it's been difficult.
Yeah. A lot more, we're getting a lot more of these being sent out as installation verification and missing pump informations as they're getting through, doing compliance checks where they're trying to compare water use registration, water use reporting to well logs. As a resolving some of the initial discrepancies, then we're following up on some of these other things. We also sent out 12 first violation notices during this quarter and also got 6 complaints. So the complaints may involve water level drops in inland lakes or streams and discovering new irrigation systems which may or may not be authorized. Okay. Quarterly metrics for July 9th, the beginning of the program year through September 30th. Jill Van Dyke does pre-screening reviews for newer increased public water supplies for drinking water division. So she passed 5 pre-screening reviews during that period. We didn't have any denials and nothing retracted. And during the same period, Andy did not issue any Part 327 permits. A 327 permit is any newer increased withdrawal over 2 MGD. So we had, in fact, Andy had just issued one on July 7th, so the very end of the previous program year, and we've got another one that's waiting for signature. They'll be in the next quarter. Okay, this bar graph shows large quantity withdrawals authorized during the first quarter. The upper portion, the 107 authorizations through the water withdrawal assessment tool. And then we also authorized 57 site-specific review registrations.
Okay, so your graph is actually reversed for your legend there. I freaked out a little when I saw this graph.
You are correct. Thank you for pointing that out. Yep.
Okay.
We have color on the slide, the legend is reversed.
Okay.
So the top part is the tool.
I don't think that's shared with that group.
No, this is what it looks like on my screen. And that's really frustrating, but.
There you
All
go.
right, there we go.
There, now you can tell them the correct.
Okay, the correct colors, yep, ignore the legend. The blue in the top is number of tool registrations, 107. And the green on the bottom, 57, that's the number of site-specific review authorizations. Okay, moving along. So this pie chart shows the total number of SSRs that were received. During that quarter, we got 74 requests in. As I said previously, we authorized 57. 1 was denied and 7 were retracted by the applicant. And the remaining 9 SSRs were still pending as of October 1st. Some of those 9 have since been authorized during the current quarter. Our timeliness statistics, the average time to complete an SSR during this quarter was 8 business days, and 92% of the SSRs were done within the statutory deadline of the 10 business days. And these bar graphs show the trend over time since the beginning of the program. Top graph is the average number of business days from receipt to completion. And the bottom graph is the percent of SSRs done within the 10 business days.
The screen isn't moving. That's okay.
Or these slides are all posted as well as part of the slide deck? Okay. So anybody who's having trouble seeing it, go to the website, and the full slide deck is posted there so we can review all the.
Yeah, everyone can see it, the teams, except.
We're okay.
We just can't see it here in the room. Okay.
There you go. You're caught up now, Jim.
I get double click everything.
Now you have to click that screen.
Yeah.
There you go.
The joys of technology.
One more click. This is what they're seeing. There you go. Perfect.
Okay. Depleted water management area update as of October 5th. So the water management areas in red are currently in zone D, meaning they're at or likely to have an adverse resource impact occurring. We recently took one of those water management areas that we shared previously off that, meaning that it's gotten back at least to the 0 balance out of the negative.
Jim, can I ask, since you're on this topic, the one that's been removed, can you talk about the process for removing it from this list? Were there water uses that were, or was it a change in how you were calculating it?
I can speak to that if you would like, Jim.
Please do, Hannah.
So for the one that came off, there was an auto pass registration that was authorized by the tool that had actually put it in the negative after an index flow review was completed. That withdrawal, once it was installed differently than authorized, but in a way that added back water to the watershed. Put it back in the positive.
Okay.
And this map shows the locations of those water management areas that are currently in zone D, along with the legend that provides a little more explanation about the current status. Okay, Blue Triton, formerly Nestle White Pine Springs. They recently, at the end of September, surrendered their Safe Drinking Water Act permit that was issued by our Drinking Water Division in Eagle. Concurrent with that, they also canceled their site-specific review registration that had increased their pump capacity from 250 to 400 GPM, which would have triggered the requirement for a Section 17 Safe Drinking Water Act permit. They sent in an amended registration through the tool and got an authorization for a 38 gallon per minute increase from the 250. So their total registered capacity is currently 288 gallons per minute. The Great Lakes Compact update. I'm Michigan's representative on the science team that advises the Great Lakes Compact Council and the regional body. And every 5 years, we're required to do a cumulative impact assessment report. The next one, cumulative impact assessment report, is due December 2023, but we've got a target completion date of December 2022. Good timing coincides with the next biennial report from the Water Use Advisory Council. Some of the focus areas for the cumulative impact assessment include levels of uncertainty in the data, past climate impacts on the water budget, future climate impacts on the water budget, and demand forecasts for various water use sectors. And I should mention that Jim Nicholas is assisting us with water budgets and the cumulative impact assessment, and also Drew Grenewald from U of M is assisting with the climate impacts. So, Jim Nicholas, if you're on the phone, is there anything you want to add at this point?
No, I think you covered it fine, Jim.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Jim, congrats on getting down to the 8-day review form for SSRs. That is awesome. I think that's the lowest I think we've ever seen.
All right.
With that, anybody else have any questions for Jim? All right, next up on the agenda is our next meeting dates and formats. Christine?
Yes? Which Christine?
Weigh in here? Christine Spitzley.
I'm sorry, what?
Do you want to weigh in on next meeting dates and formats?
I believe it is December the 12th, 14th. I'm sorry, it should be. I believe it's December 14th.
Yeah.
Yes.
December 14th.
And I'm assuming
and
same channel, and we'll see what things are like in December.
Yeah. And hopefully next time we'll be able to get some of the glitches, technical glitches, smoothed out too by then. All right. Getting close to closing here. Open comment time. Anyone from the public like to make any open comments? We have a 3-minute time limit. I cannot see any raised hands, so speak up, please. John,
Brian,
John
Yelich
Yelich,
here.
your hand is up.
Yep. I wanted to give a quick update on Michigan Geologic Survey and the mapping that we're doing in Ottawa and Allegan County. So I'll try and do it in 3 minutes. So bear with me as I race through this. We have USGS funding to map Allegan and Ottawa counties to update the current county maps, the geology, the surface geology and near surface, subsurface geology. in August, which is why I didn't attend the council meeting, is because I didn't have internet access from my truck while I was out on drill rig during the whole month of August. We were core drilling. We core drilled in Olive Township, Allendale, Zeeland, and Jamestown Townships. We drilled the bedrock. We also installed 4 monitor wells in 3 of those locations, one of them in Ottawa, the other one Allendale, and the third in Jamestown, where we set monitor wells in the Marshall, as we did in the other 2, as well as in the glacial bedrock, glacial material. And so now Ottawa County has automatic monitoring systems installed in those, so that we're now putting data into the data system that can be used by everybody for the area. So just want to give the update, the draft map. We will hope to have something out after the first of the year, but because of COVID and not being able to get to the field, we couldn't do all the geologic mapping, but we're processing and doing that. Just wanted to give you an update that as the survey, we're trying to install monitor wells and other things in what we're doing now, so that can be a greater benefit. And then, of course, we'll probably look to federal funding to help support, and that's through the National Groundwater Monitoring Network, to get monitoring programs in place so that we can look at groundwater. Thank you.
Excellent, John. Good progress. Anybody else have any public comment?
Actually, Brian, if you don't mind, I have a question for John.
Okay, go ahead.
John, with the monitors that you put in Ottawa County, is any of the data that you're going to be collecting for that something that can inform the work that we were hearing about earlier on Ottawa County's continuing plan for water use and looking at potential water impacts, increased development? And I don't know if that's a question for you or for Pat, but wondering about the crossover there.
Well, thank you. And what we did as a mapping group, we went to Ottawa County and said, what are the areas of critical need that you need to have information? And we dovetailed the 2 together. That's a great question that I didn't comment on. And so they told us where they had a need for data. And that's where we then corresponded with, yes, we could use the geologic data in the same area, because we're coring continuously from surface down to the Marshall or to the bedrock. And so it was a collaboration where it's a win-win, where the county is now getting data where they needed it, and we're getting geologic data, and then they're going to convert that and have the water level data that they'll be able to monitor and put into public domain.
Great.
Thanks.
Anybody else have any questions of John?
It looks like Todd Feaster's got his hand up.
Todd?
Yeah, thank you. John, you said you guys went to the bedrock with the exploratory well or your geologic well. Did you go through the Marshall, or did you just go to the bedrock?
No, this is USGS funding, and what we're doing is we're looking at the glacial down to the bedrock contact. What we did do is that we actually drilled in Zeeland, and this is where there was no Marshall. Essentially was glacial material into cold water shale. So it was something that was unexpected for us. So our mapping protocols are glacial material to tag at least 10 foot into the bedrock. And in this program with the monitor wells, we made sure that we had enough drilling into the bedrock to at least provide the Marshall or whatever the aquifer was as a monitoring system, so we could complete it as a monitor well.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Todd. Anybody else? Okay, anybody else have any public comment? Going once, going twice. Hearing none. We don't have to vote on this, but if someone would like to make a motion to adjourn, I think we can all agree to it.
This is Frank. I'll move to adjourn even if it doesn't count.
All right, Frank, thank you. All right, thanks for joining, everybody. Have a rest of a great day, and we'll look forward to seeing all your smiling faces back in December. Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Stop the recording.